Hi, I'm Michael Wisler, and I'm going to do a quick commentary of this short film. If you haven't seen this short film before, I encourage you to click on the link below and check it out first, and then come back here and look at the commentary if you're curious about learning about the behind the scenes and what went into the process of making this film and what inspired this story. Thanks for watching. Like I said, this is Michael Wisler, the writer and director of this short film. I co-wrote it with Andrew Gilbert. Right off the bat here, you see something a little different, something that I've abandoned doing, which is opening credits for short films. I don't really believe in doing opening credits for short films anymore. I kind of talk about that a little bit more at length of why that happened in my book, Short Films 2.0, just to how the landscape for short films has changed dramatically because of YouTube, and the fact that realistically, even short opening credits like this really don't tend to slow the movie down. And I think if I was making this film today, I made this film back in 2013 now, and if I was making it today, I would not quite have this drawn out. Certainly wouldn't have had the opening credits quite the same way, though the sequence of shots is definitely important in that we were trying to establish, this very bizarre application that Jocelyn is filling out here. My favorite answer of hers. And this is all shot in Cambridge, in a location there in an old building. We've gotten comments before from people about the location and the look, and is a tech company really going to have a kind of place like this? And but generally those kinds of comments come in from people who are not from the New England area and not quite familiar with this sort of reality of high tech and old architecture sort of living together. So we embraced that. We looked at a few possibilities, some other places to potentially shoot the film, but this was done with an all-volunteer cast and crew, so we had to keep it really nimble and go with what we were able to access. I love that chalkboard, by the way. Lots of really relevant stuff in terms of what's actually goes on in vitrification. But one of my regrets is right there in the background is these posters, these fake magazine covers. I loved designing them. I had a lot of fun with them. But I wish I would have spent the money to have them framed nicely. That's like one of my things that I wish we would have done. We spent money on some really nice lenses, and our cinematographer Bryant Naro got to shoot with the Zeiss super speeds. They're awesome lenses, and you can tell it looks beautiful. But in the end, I think spending money on production design is probably a little higher value. Thankfully, a lot of people that are watching the film seem to be responding very positively to what the story really is about, which is these two characters.
Man, nerds, right? Might as well have called it bush tech or beaver tech, because that's what they were really thinking.
We wanted to be able to establish a really interesting, awkward, and highly intense scenario very quickly for these characters. And so that's the nature of this whole interview process, is the door is locked. As we're going to discover here in just a moment, there's a buzzer, which is why she's wearing the band. It's measuring her heart rate. And so this whole thing is meant to be very intense and sort of be almost like a lie detector-esque kind of scenario, just to be able to detect, more importantly, like what a person is really motivated by as they're screening these subjects. And the reality is there isn't, at least I don't know of any programs quite like this. There are actual cryonics programs out there that are investing in actually preserving people or just preserving people's heads. It's really bizarre, interesting stuff. We purposely chose to keep the story, keep things cryptic as the story develops, so that we wouldn't necessarily give away that that's exactly what's going on, to keep the audience interested. But in the background, if you know anything about cryonics, in the background you'll see a diagram there behind Jocelyn that is actually very much a direct diagram on how exactly cryonics is supposed to work. To the right, over her left shoulder on the right side of the screen, when we're on close-ups of Jocelyn there, you can also see the law of non-contradiction. Has nothing to do with cryonics, but I just wanted to put it in there. It's actually brought up when Jocelyn says, hey, isn't there a law that says it can't both be and not be? So the law of non-contradiction actually comes in as a bit of dialogue.
To assess every applicant that comes in for our project. I'm going to ask you a few
So
questions.
yeah, I don't know of any projects out there that are quite like this, that are taking applicants necessarily. But cryonics is a reality, but it's built upon a hope that someday there will be a means to actually unfreeze people and bring them back to life. We assume in this story that that's been figured out.
I just want to start over. Don't you ever wish you could just start over?
Can you be more
And that's really the heart of the story, the concept of wanting to be able to just hit a complete reset on life. Even as we made the film, I remember having conversations with people who just, crew members who just admitted that, like, wow, like I connect with this script because, oh, there's the buzzer. Great addition by Andrew Gilbert, by the way. That was his idea in one of the revisions of the script, and I loved it. Even in talking with crew members, people would bring up that, man, I really connect with this story, this idea of longing for a better future and believing that maybe if I just did this, if I just could escape, then life would be better. Then I would be happy. And the need for the embracing the possibilities of the here and now, even as complex and as lonely and as rejected as we might feel in the moment, how important that is. This was a risk as for me on a personal level to go tell this story. I am a Christian, come from a conservative Christian background. Today I would say I am far from, I'm post-evangelical. I'm not necessarily a conservative Christian by any stretch of the imagination. And as you can tell from the themes in this film, I fully embrace my LGBTQ brothers and sisters, and don't hold the same views as some folks that I know very well and love very, very much. So even just doing this project was a bit of a personal risk in that sense, because it meant putting something out there that didn't quite fit with the worldview of people I knew. Even some people that I approached to work with on the project, people who I love very much, and that just once they read the script, just felt like, oh no, I can't be involved with that. So it was, there was some repercussions there. The honest truth, I think I lost a friend in the process of making this film. Person has not ever really talked to me again, which is really sad. They're a great person, and both, like, I miss working with them, and I just miss them as a friend, and I would be happy to agree to disagree or be able to just dialogue about these things more, but they did not take well my making this film, telling this story, and concluding this story in the way that I did. And what are you going to do? So there's a little bit of, even just in the process of doing this, a bit of that, just a small touch of the rejection and some of the complexities of the animosity that exists still around anything relating to coming out. So what Jocelyn experiences, obviously to a far bigger level than what I'm experiencing in that situation with that friend. But then, even in just trying to tell the story, there's a little bit of that that comes up to the surface, and is a reality for someone in my position of having sort of a foot in both worlds of, being someone who very much is part of a faith community, and has family who are deeply religious, deeply conservative folks, and also being a progressive artist and filmmaker, trying to tell the stories that I think are meaningful, taking risks and telling stories that I think are worthwhile and meaningful. Because at the end of the day, for me, the reality of playing with ice is that it's not, to me, I don't see it as necessarily a gay movie or lesbian movie as much as here's a story about people who are dealing with rejection, who are dealing with hiding themselves and not revealing either to themselves or to other people who they really are, how they really feel. And so both Jocelyn and Emma are in different places, but their struggle is connected. Their struggle is real. One of the things that I did in preparing the story and writing the script with Gilbert was that we showed the script to a friend of mine, Raleigh, who happens to be a lesbian and also was the editor for this film. And I showed the script to her pretty early on just to be able to get some feedback from her, because I was just like, I want to know how does this sit for you? Is this in any way missing the mark, or well-intentioned but unintentionally condescending, or just really missing what the experience of a lesbian woman in 2013 is or can be in this world? And her feedback was really helpful. It was really good. She really felt like, oh, okay, no, I think you hit some pretty important realities here about what that experience is like of coming out and being rejected. And even her girlfriend at the time, her story was very similar to Jocelyn's in a lot of ways. So it was good. It was good to get that kind of feedback, to be able to go into this with confidence of saying, I think we're saying something meaningful here. I think we're saying something that's worthwhile. It's really interesting to me that, we've had this thing on YouTube for a good 3 years or something like that. And then suddenly it's been getting a lot of action lately. And, so I'm recording this commentary in 2017, in October of 2017. And, from October of 2016 to October of 2017, we're living in a rather different America. And I think there's something to be said about what, how people are feeling about our culture and our leadership, and how safe for a while there we felt. And then how maybe unsafe we're feeling right now. And a lot of things are being rolled back, including civil rights for LGBTQ people. And suddenly seeing this movie get a lot of spikes, a lot of plays on YouTube, I feel like it's indicative of a reality that people are feeling more and more like, oh, yeah, we could kind of take some of these things for granted. Suddenly this idea of wanting to escape to a better future where you feel less rejected, less like an outcast, more like you can be yourself, suddenly starts feeling pretty relevant again. And this is a pretty important moment here where Emma opens up and really shares her reality, which was a tough thing. It's not something that she is used to doing. And Kate plays this so well. I've worked with Kate on a few projects. This was our first project, first narrative film project together. We'd done some commercial work before that. And she's even on the cover of my novel, Unidentified. I think she does a beautiful job of catching the difficulty of conveying this message of opening the vulnerability of opening yourself up like this. And it was a particular challenge to try to create such a high stakes, high pressure situation that would push these characters into such a state of vulnerability with each other. Because if you really step back and think about it, it's completely unnatural. Like I think the reality is most likely this would never happen, but I wanted to make it feel believable that it could happen over the course of 15 or 20 minutes, because that's the nature of a short film. You're trying to catapult people into an emotional experience in such a short amount of time. And it's also why, we wanted to keep things subtle. So actually, when we were shooting the film, we had a lot of conversations with Laura, who's playing Jocelyn, and with Kate, who's playing Emma, about the body posture, movement, tone of voice, and even when do they touch. And so there's that moment at the beginning of the film where there's that awkward, like they kind of missed the opportunity to shake hands. So they actually have not touched each other yet. Even when Jocelyn returned the band off of her arm, she drops it into Emma's open hand. And so they still haven't touched each other. So that we kept it to this very subtle reality here at the end, that they do finally have this moment of their hands meeting just very subtly. Yeah, there it is. She just drops it into her hand without touching. And they're still kind of like feeling each other out to some degree. Like, is this okay? Is this even possible?
Maybe you can tell me why you want to go to Iceland.
But we wanted to keep it nice and subtle and keep it very human. Their interaction, we wanted to stay away from cliches of a lot of lesbian characters in movies, in that so many lesbian movies, or movies that have lesbians in them, you end up with the mandatory makeout scene and all that. And that just felt completely ludicrous and absurd in this situation. Like, there's no way like they would kiss. But that's why this moment feels so important, that they're close. There's some real flirtation going on. She symbolically retracts herself, and there it is. They touch hands for the first time. It's very subtle. It's not even like what one would consider to be a sensual touch or anything like that, but there's this little moment of acknowledgement of touch between the two of them. Final look, and then out. And this was a really challenging shot to get. It was, we were at the end of a very, very, very long day of shooting. I think we shot for 20 hours or something like that. And so we're working to get the camera working to push in, and poor Kate's exhausted, because this is a tough, emotional script, and so she's exhausted, and trying to get to this moment of just really capturing her vulnerability and being able to finally sort of breathe a sigh of relief of being herself. Very thankful for the music that we got to use in the end credits for this, provided by Jennifer Knapp. I was able to just reach out to her. I've been following her for quite a while, actually, since her first album, Christian Musician. And who made some waves when she came out several years ago, and so I as I started working on this, I decided to reach out to her and say, hey, would it be okay for us to use one of your songs? And there it is, Fallen. I encourage you to check it out, because it's a beautiful song. Check out the rest of her music. She writes great music. It just felt fitting, given even what she has gone through in that reality of coming out as a Christian artist. And so it was certainly a great pleasure to get to use her song. And we got to get a nice shot of Boston here at the end. We wanted to acknowledge we shot this just I believe not long after the marathon bombings, and so we wanted to acknowledge that, and acknowledge that in our own way we're trying to bring a little bit of beauty and acceptance and love into the world, rather than divisiveness, ugliness, and violence. Again, this is Michael Wisler. Thank you so much for watching this commentary. I really appreciate you checking this out. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to comment below. And of course, please subscribe to our channel. We've got loads of short films here on Stories by the River, and we continue to try to make stories that spark meaning of life type questions. So please click on the links, and thanks for watching.